I'm gonna skip ahead to the Kenny Omega Gabe Kidd match, just because we've been talking a good bit lately and writing a good bit lately about Kenny Omega and his return. Okay, so I'd read your review because I didn't watch this one live Saturday night, Sunday morning, as you know, as that show went on the East Coast. And then I didn't watch it. I didn't get to watch this until last night. So I'd already read your review. Then I watched Dynamite, which we'll talk about here in the podcast as well. And it's had seen Omega's return just in a mic capacity, and then there was a beat down and all that kind of stuff going on to set up some storylines there in AEW. Um, but I'm telling all that so I can kind of say in his promo in AEW on Dynamite, Omega, sort of was making the point. Well, I had diverticulitis. It's something that almost killed me. It was really hard, obviously, coming back from that, and I may not be the same Kenny Omega. I'm gonna probably have to. He didn't use the words water it down, but it sounded like he was trying to talk about I'm gonna have to, you know, pick my spots a little better. And so I'm thinking, as I flipped the match on last night, I'm thinking, well, okay, he talked about he's not gonna be the same Kenny Omega and this, that, and the other. And then I see this match. And it's like he's still it was like 5, 6 years ago, Kenny Omega. It was like Kenny Omega when he was wrestling in the Tokyo Dome against Okada, Omega. I mean, this match so for a guy who says he's not going to be able to do what Kenny Omega did, he did everything Kenny Omega did in his first match back with Gabe Kidd. It was a great testament to a Kenny Omega match. So, man, hopefully he's not going to hold back in AEW now because he was classic Kenny Omega here.
If there ever was a star-making performance, this was a star-making performance for Gabe Kidd, who he is the New Japan Strong champion at the moment, but on the hierarchy of New Japan titles, I don't know how high that is.
Yeah.
Maybe for American audiences, it's valuable, but Gabe Kidd is still finding his footing. He's not the leader of his own faction. He's a part of David Finlay's War Dogs. Um, these guys told a fantastic story leading up to this match, and the commentary did a lot of justice, which we'll talk about in a minute, I guess. But Kenny Omega really is a generational performer. Um, you could make an argument over the last 10 years, he's been the best wrestler in the world. I think a very strong argument. And I was at the show in West Virginia in 2022 when he returned after his absence, and he wore that black shirt. And I'll just say this, he did not look this good then when he returned in 2022 as he does now. He looked fantastic. This match, was pretty long and methodical until about halfway in, and then they really blew the roof off and went to the walls. And but man, I mean, I gave it a 4.5 stars, which is I think the highest rating I've given a match thus far, actively reviewing them. Um, and it was well warranted. At the end of the match, Tanahashi was overcome with emotion, crying at Gabe Kidd's fighting spirit and the way he defended New Japan. This was an early match of the year candidate, if there ever were one.
You know what I like about this is this match and then the Zack Sabre Jr. Ricochet match reminds me of what I like about Gato's booking. Let's just say his not just because, and I shouldn't say booking necessarily because booking is putting the matches together and telling the stories. The production that goes into these matches, good New Japan matches, main event level matches. They do. It's when you said it started out slower and then built up. They do that. The first 10 minutes or so, this is how wrestling was done in 50 years ago. And I know the Jim Cornettes of the world don't like to hear that it's done this well, but it starts out as a wrestling match. It starts out as two guys feeling each other out. They trade advantages. A guy will control for a couple minutes, the other guy will, hit a move and control for a few minutes, and then you get maybe the first 15 minutes of the match of a good 30-minute main event level match in New Japan will start out that way, where it's a contest, and there's one guy leads, one other guy leads, and then you get to the spots where you sort of get the series of near falls. The we don't it's not it doesn't start out 100 miles an hour in minute one.
Mhm.
Like unfortunately too much of the AEW production does. They start out, they go 0 to 60 in 3 seconds, and then what's left? Um, and so this match was a great example of that. It was slow, and then it built up to a conclusion, just like any good story does. And so, yeah, I love that. Again, it was a good reminder. I mean, it's been away from the product for a while. It was a good reminder of what Gato and Tanahashi and that group do so well.
Gato's talked before about his affinity for Jim Cornette and the Midnight Express and Jim Crockett Promotions in Mid-South, and how in the 90s wrestling in Japan had become so shoot oriented, and how he loved classic wrestling and how it influenced his booking style over the years. And I mean, it's evident, he just understands storytelling and, like you said, production, and how important it is to build stars as legitimate athletes. And I just, if you're not a New Japan fan, Gabe Kidd trained in the LA dojo after Shibata I guess it was a brain hemorrhage, or he was paralyzed. He became the teacher at the LA dojo and trained the next crop of foreign wrestlers. And Gabe Kidd was one of his students. And he's never graduated from that young boy attitude of, I wear black trunks and I'm still finding my identity. And in this match, he comes out with the New Japan logo on his trunks, demonstrating that he's defending New Japan against Kenny Omega, who betrayed the company. And he used the Inoki special, which Shibata taught him, to try to not only make Kenny Omega submit, but playing in the diverticulitis and how his abdomen is, you know, he had 2 feet of his intestines removed, and so much of this match was just beautiful. I mean, him going into his bag and pulling out those things Shibata taught him, representing New Japan and the fighting spirit that Inoki passed on to Shibata, was beautiful. And I understand why Tanahashi was so emotional over the match, because you're seeing this kid who is not yet really made a name for himself become a star, and now all of a sudden he looks like the next big foreign star in New Japan.